Welcome to the 6th annual Golden Crocoduck Awards.
Featuring our 6 Golden Crocoduck nominees, St. Jude Thaddeus, and a special message from Kyle. So we come to the 2013 Golden Crocoduck Award ceremony, and it's nice to see you all wearing your best tuxedos and party frocks. The reason we host the event on October 28th is because this is the feast day of St. Jude Thaddeus, the patron saint of lost causes. The Golden Crocoduck is awarded every year, after a short hiatus, for the biggest breach of the 9th commandment in pursuit of the creationist cause. So who will be this year's winner? Well, let's start with Kat Kerr, the crazy stick lady, and her hostage.
Authority over the weather.
I will not tolerate
I will not tolerate
destruction from Laura.
destruction from Laura.
Unfortunately, being batshit crazy isn't the criterion for the award, so Kat Kerr is disqualified on the grounds of diminished responsibility. What about Kyle, who thinks evolution is
Crazy.
because it's...
Crazy.
Well, this is an interesting one, because Kyle has tried to get out of his nomination by claiming the whole thing was a joke.
It was surreal, it was ironic, and it was an inside joke.
Unfortunately, Kyle seems to be the only one who was in on it. But just so that everyone understands that it was a joke, and Kyle was only pretending to be a religious nutcase railing against science, I'll play parts of his nomination joke video, and then his very sensible and normal reply video, so you can see the difference.
Again, we've never seen this, just like we haven't seen monkey into man. We haven't seen the eye develop. We haven't seen DNA come to be in a primordial soup. Free-thinking, rational person believes in the flood unless you're a history denier. All the cultures report the flood, and the atheists will be like, look it, every culture reports a flood, therefore Christianity copied it. Or maybe it actually happened. Doesn't make any sense. You could have just read this. The Bible, it brings you truth. Jesus is the truth. Jesus is salvation.
So, as you can see, Kyle's perfectly normal, and one of those videos was a joke. I forget which one. Kennedy Hall was a serious contender. His breach was his false premise that you needed star fusion to make the first elements. Matt Powell had a similar stab at debunking the Big Bang by claiming that singularity was full of particles which exploded. And a lot of people thought Michael Behe ought to win because he's been pushing the same false claim about a mousetrap for decades. And finally, James Tour, who claims he knows living tissue can't survive inside dinosaur bones for 70 million years, based on the fact that it only survives a short time in water. I forget how long.
A few days.
Oh, right.
Or a week.
Okay, Jim, don't labour the point. But I can tell you now that James Tour didn't win, even though I have to agree he's pretty clueless. In lieu of the award, I made him go away and do lines, admitting to his deficiency. Kennedy Hall hasn't won either, tempting as that was, and sadly, Behe had to be ruled out when he was hospitalised after a creationist experiment gone horribly wrong. In the end, the judges decided to award the prize to one candidate for the sheer volume of brazen bullshit he's produced. So congratulations, Matt Powell. Come and get your award, Matt. Oh, God, it's drunk again. Now we have to take a peek at the body of work that made him such a deserving winner of the award this year. So get ready, folks, for some more Golden Crocodilia, and wake up.
People always ask me, how do you get people to doubt evolution, Matt?
Please tell us the secret.
3-word Google search. When monkeys surf.
Wow, it really is that simple. Well, let's do it. I googled when monkeys surfed and came up with several media stories. Only one of them, in National Geographic, mentioned surfing monkeys in a headline, but then explained in the article that monkeys might have migrated to South America by unwittingly crossing the ocean on floating vegetation during the Eocene about 35 million years ago. Okay, so
evolution literally teaches that monkeys rafted, according to this article, 900 miles on debris.
Well, it's certainly a hypothesis, and the problem with this hypothesis is...
What'd they do for food?
Well, some of these rafts of vegetation are dozens of meters long, and the journey would only have taken about 10 days. there would have been things like leaves, fruits, insects, mollusks, and small reptiles on the rafts. Small mammals can easily survive that long on a sparse diet.
What do they drink? They're freshwater animals.
Rainwater. Anything else? Oh, well, that wiped the smile off Matt's face. He's just figured out that because these rafts are huge agglomerations of vegetation, there's no reason at all why monkeys can't be carried on them. That's how a lot of small animals travel from one place to another, even today. We can see these rafts in oceans, resulting from storms that uproot trees and bushes and send them down rivers. Even monkeys have been spotted on vegetation rafts in Colombia. Now that he's got no arguments against the science, Matt has to resort to doing what creationists always do: make up something silly and claim that's what scientists believe. It's called a straw man. You can almost hear his brain working as he tries to invent something silly enough to debunk.
Look, you have a monkey stranded on a log, a stump. One of them literally said he rafted on a little piece of bark.
I'm a member of Pathological Liars Anonymous. In fact, I'm the president of that organization.
People say, Matt, how do we know you're not strawmanning them? I literally had somebody ask me this. It's so far-fetched to think that they actually believe in surfing monkeys, Matt. It's true, they do.
But of course they don't, and that's how we know that Matt is strawmanning. He can't cite a single scientific paper talking about surfing monkeys or monkeys floating on pieces of bark. He gives us instructions on how to find the evidence, and when we do, that comes up empty. All the articles, and most importantly all the scientific research articles, and even Matt himself, talk about rafting, not surfing.
That monkeys rafted, according to this article.
So at this point, I have a question. Do you believe in...
Noah's flood, the fact of science.
Oh, great, that was easy. So if Noah's Ark and all the animals ended up after the flood on Mount Ararat, how did koalas get across the ocean to Australia, lemurs to Madagascar, and most importantly, how did monkeys get across the Atlantic to South America? Now, Matt doesn't explain, but the creationist website Answers in Genesis does. And guess what? Floating log rafts, or surfing monkeys as Matt calls them, described by Answers in Genesis more than once as floating mats of vegetation. How does Creationist Ministries International explain it? Well, knock me over with a dinosaur feather: rafting. That is, log mats driven by ocean currents. See, I don't need to make up straw man. It's so much easier and more fun to quote what creationists actually say and let them tie themselves up in knots.
Evolution literally teaches that monkeys rafted, according to this article, 900 miles on debris. The Bible verse that comes to mind right now, I think, professing themselves to be wise, they became fools.
What a coincidence. That's the Bible verse that comes to my mind too. Matt Powell was also nominated for this.
In the center of the United States, we have an area that's known as the Dinosaur Peninsula.
Okay, before I let Matt go on, I just want to tell you something really interesting about the Dinosaur Peninsula. It doesn't exist and never has. But we'll let Matt build on this mythical peninsula for a while, because then it'll be much more fun when I reveal his source and we can watch the whole pack of cards come tumbling down.
Now, within the Dinosaur Peninsula is 10,000 adult Maiasura that are buried together. How big of a catastrophe would you have to have for water to go over several states, before it was the United States, of course, a wave of water coming over that amount of land and burying dinosaurs, 10,000 adults, dead center in the United States?
Sure, if this peninsula ever existed, and if 10,000 dinosaurs were found buried there, and if their deaths happened at exactly the same time, and if there was geological evidence of a flood, then yes, a case could be made for some kind of regional tsunami. We see that all the time, and we see the evidence it leaves behind.
That, by definition, is a global flood.
But obviously it's not, unless you have no idea what by definition means. By definition, a global flood is a flood that covers the world. By definition, a peninsular flood is a flood on a portion of land nearly surrounded by water connected to a much larger piece of land. So even if Matt's entirely imaginary dinosaur peninsula were real, And if all the ifs had actually happened, it still doesn't show a worldwide flood. By definition, it's just a regional one. And while we're on the subject, can creationists please try to understand the meaning of the word literally?
You know what they're also telling kids across America? They're playing literal supposed education videos of dinosaurs farting so much that they died from it. They're literally playing that in science classes.
I told her it was homework, that my teacher told me to do it, and she got fired. Yeah, that's what happened.
When you make up a straw man, it doesn't make it any more real or convincing to add the word literally. That's not what the word means.
So they will literally believe anything.
Oh God, not you too. Matt Powell got this farting dinosaur story from the internet, which kicked off with an article in the Mail Online that was repeated on Fox News and then went viral. Without bothering to check, he assumed that this must be science, and then assumed it must therefore be taught in schools. He thinks that by adding the word literally, he can magically turn his belief into fact. Doesn't work that way, Matt.
They're literally playing that in science classes.
So here's a challenge, Matt. If you were speaking literally and not hyperbolically, then show us the video you claim is being shown in schools. When you can't produce it, I look forward to you literally eating your words. And if you still don't know what literally means, here's what eating your words looks like, literally.
I believe. I have faith.
Anyway, back to the Dinosaur Peninsula. One reason we know it's hypothetical is that if it really did exist, we'd see the evidence. Evidence of rivers, lakes, marshes, estuaries, marine sediment, erosion, beaches, paleosols, and fossils. And if all this got suddenly flooded, we'd see flood sediment covering it. What the evidence actually shows from that period is not land surrounded by water, but water, a warm, shallow tropical sea, surrounded by land. But if you're not that impressed with the physical evidence, the second reason we know it's hypothetical is because the guy who invented it said so. Remember what I always suggest you do to disprove junk science: check the source. In other words, find out where Powell got the map from. I put his map into Google image search and immediately got a result. It comes, you probably guessed, from a creationist website. And where did they get the idea from? Well, the author, Tim Clarey, PhD, yes, PhD, didn't actually find any evidence of this ancient peninsula, but he surmised that it ought to be there because it's a logical consequence of the biblical flood. It seems the dinosaurs were able to survive through the early flood in the west, he writes, simply because they were able to congregate and scramble to the elevated remnants of land. And he made up a name for his made-up peninsula. I call this high ground Dinosaur Peninsular, he writes. And he admits that the map, which Powell portrays as real, is purely hypothetical. It shows a hypothetical landmass, he writes. That's why the text is full of caveats. As for the 10,000 dinosaur graveyard, Tim Clarey, PhD, oh yes, PhD, doesn't claim to have seen this himself. He thinks paleontologist Jack Horner found it, referencing Horner's 1989 book, Digging Dinosaurs. Clarey claims Horner reported a huge dinosaur graveyard of over 10,000 adult Maiasura in a small area. No young were mixed in with them. In a flood model, this is easily explained. The adult dinosaurs were likely stampeding away from the imminent danger of raging floodwaters. Their young could not keep up and became engulfed in some lower part of the peninsula. And guess who falls for that speculation? Hook, line, and sinker.
Now, within the Dinosaur Peninsula is 10,000 adult Maiasura that are buried together. There was 0 young found. That means that these adult dinosaurs left their young behind and tried running away from the flood.
Yeah, that's what happened.
Only one problem here. Horner's excavations did turn up young dinosaurs from nesting sites that included eggs, embryos, and juveniles, and he found evidence that they were being cared for by their mothers. In fact, Horner concludes that the entire area was a nesting site. And where was this small area Clarey refers to as the burial ground? It wasn't anywhere near his hypothetical Dinosaur Peninsula. Horner's excavations were much further west, in present-day Montana. Clarey leaves that out, of course, because it doesn't fit what he wants to believe. How about the idea that these dinosaurs had taken refuge on higher ground to get away from a global flood? Again, there's a problem. Not only were they hundreds of miles from the hypothetical Dinosaur Peninsular, these dinosaurs lived in a low-lying area. The high ground was behind them. But at least we still have some dead dinosaurs. Surely that's evidence of a flood. I mean, otherwise, Matt, how do scientists explain their deaths? Come on, wake up.
But they weren't buried according to evolution. They think that, oh, they just happened to die peacefully.
Okay, just for fun, here's a multiple choice question. Hands up if you think Matt's telling the truth for once, and scientists really concluded that all these dinosaurs died peacefully. Okay, hands up if you're going out on a limb and guess that Matt is strawmanning again and pulled this out of his arse. Let's see. 1, 2... Well, looks like everyone thinks he made it up. Except one of the creationists. And you're right. No paleontologist has ever suggested that. Horner concluded they died due to gas asphyxiation during a volcanic eruption. So Clancy's only evidence for his hypothetical peninsula is that it ought to exist according to the Bible. And because the Bible says there was a flood, there ought to be a graveyard there. Powell then takes this hypothetical peninsula and claims it really existed.
In the center of the United States, we have an area that's known as the Dinosaur Peninsula.
Then he says, since it's real, that proves the global flood must be real. And if the global flood is real, then the Bible has been proved correct. It's a wonderful example of circular logic, kind of like a Harry Potter fan believing the books are true and making a website showing his hypothetical plan of what Hogwarts School of Magic would look like. Then someone assumes the plan is real and therefore proof that Hogwarts really exists. And since Hogwarts exists, the books must be true. In another video, Matt makes the extraordinary claim that Noah's Ark contained fully grown dinosaurs, even the T-Rex and Brontosaurus. Now that's just ridiculous, even if you believe the Bible is... What, you want me to show you the clip of Matt actually saying that? Well, sorry, I can't, because I just made it up. And that's how you can spot a straw man. When someone tells you what his opponent says, whether it's creationists claiming something a scientist said, or politicians of opposing parties, or countries at war, never take those claims at face value, unless they show you the video or document being quoted. He can't show us where these things come from, because he's making them up as he goes along. A very deserving Golden Crocoduck winner.
And look, I don't want to come off as a total jerk or something.
Oh, of course, I'll try to make sure that doesn't happen.